this is my application. Okay, so as you know, I'm a Holocaust survivor, and I was born in Munkac, which was Czechoslovakia, in 1930, and in 1939 the Hungarians came in. So the Hungarians were more than happy to do the preliminary work for the Nazis, of course. My family consisted of two older sisters, and two older brothers, myself, and the youngest one. She was 9 years old. And my mother was a very a designer, skillful seamstress. My father had a grocery store. And when the Hungarians came in, times were bad, they were difficult, and it was hard to make a living. So my two sisters went to Budapest to get a job, earn a living, and send it home. My father had to resort to the black market. He bought raw hide, hid it in the attic, stretched it, and stained it, and it was my job to deliver it to the buyer. So I was tall and skinny. They wrapped it around my body and put on a big coat, and I had to, at 13, I had to deliver it, and hoping that nobody would stop me. To this day I remember how scared I was, but we had to eat, had to do it. My education had stopped. I was just about to enter high school. I was very excited. I wore a high school uniform and was not meant to be. Professors, Jewish professors, scientists, educators, doctors, all were denied their profession. And after that, the Hungarians mobilized Jewish men to help with the war effort. Hard labor, slave labor, of course. They had to build trenches, roads, carry heavy equipment. A lot of them died of malnourishment and maltreatment. My father used to send postcards home that he was a very hopeful man. The hope keeps him going. And sure enough, he did come back. By that time, the Nazis came in, followed the Hungarians, and they had to wear a yellow star, of course. And he came home only to enter the ghetto. The ghetto consisted of the Jewish section of the town. It consisted of several blocks, and we had to double up with other families. So we took the minimum amount of belongings. And we had uncles living there, so we doubled up with them. And that was for 2 weeks. Soon after that, they started to mobilize us into the cattle cars. We didn't know where we were going. We were not exposed to any news, like today it couldn't happen that way. We weren't allowed to listen to the radio. So we had absolutely no idea where we're going, what it's about. And this was in 1944. And in 1944, some part of Poland was already liberated. I found that out later. I could not believe that I would have a lot of questions for my father today. 1944, several months later, Munkacs area was liberated. How did we not know? So anyhow, they mobilized us into the cattle cars. We took minimum amount of belongings, again, mostly food. And there were 45 cattle cars, 85 to 90 people in a cattle car. We were like sardines. There was not enough room for everyone to sit. We had to take turns. The elimination, there had 2 pairs there. It was awful. And I was hungry, and I didn't want to eat the food that we had with us because I didn't know how long it would take. In fact, I tell the story about my mother's favorite cockroach. I don't know if you're familiar with that. I couldn't wait to eat it. Kept putting it off. So this went on. The trip took about 4 or 5 days. People were fainting and, couldn't tolerate it. So we arrived in Auschwitz. We didn't know anything about Auschwitz, but that was Auschwitz. At night, they opened the cattle car, they opened the doors, and we see Nazis, shining boots, and vicious dogs greeting us. Heraus, heraus, quick, quick, everything, quick, quick. My poor grandmother had taken a wheelchair. So we were my immediate family, my 2 grandmothers, my aunt with 8 children, including a set of twins. So we all lined up, and my father, what did we see? We saw fire and smoke all around us. And my father said, we should all say Shema. We had to line up in a column, and we kept walking and saying Shema. And then they separated the men from the women. So my father was with my brother, who was 15, and I went with my mother and my 9-year-old little sister, and my aunt with the 8 children, and so we just kept on walking. We didn't know what. And the selection took place. So as we were walking, it must have been one of the Polish Jews. The Polish Jews were deported 2 years prior our arrival. And the Nazis all made them do the dirty work, selection, who will live and who will die. So as he came to me, I held on to my mother tight on one side, my little sister on the other side, and he just tore me away and told me to go to the other side. And I ran back. I didn't know what was going on. I was 13-year-olds those days were naive, not like today, they're more precocious. And the guy just was determined to save me. Again, he took me away. And I saw a soldier, a Nazi, who was Mengele, which turned out to be Mengele, I didn't know that. In my naivete, I went over to him. I said, I'm only 13, please let me go with my mother. And he just told the guy, deal with her. I was lucky. Because if you were under 14, they automatically eliminated you. So it was Bashir, I guess. So I ran back again, and my mother said, go, go. I'm sorry when I come to this point. And she must have known. So we hugged and kissed, said goodbye with my 9-year-old little sister. I never saw them again. So, sent me to the other side, they shaved your hair off and gave you a uniform and, I should say, prison guard. And then they put you in a room of showers to disinfect you. While my mother went to different showers. So, okay, so ignorance and sometimes bliss. After all that, they put you in the barrack. They had several layers of beds with hardboard. We were 6 in one bed, 3 on each side. And they gave us our rations, which was a piece of black bread and green, very liquidy soup. And you're hungry, you eat whatever's available, but a lot of the women couldn't tolerate it. And they threw up, the diarrhea. But I ate leftovers. You eat anything when you starve. It's not hunger, it's starvation. So this was the daily rations. Our existence was to stay on that bed and the selection twice a day, every day. By the way, there was a pregnant woman with us who happened to be close to labor, and we tried to save her. We hid her. She gave birth, and you must have heard of the couple, the one that is in charge of us, Polish woman that was there already for 2 years, and she was very bitter and wasn't kind. And she says, "You'll never see your family again. See the fire, see the smoke, you'll never see them again." She didn't have to say that. But she couldn't take my hope away from me. I still felt that I had a kiss with my mother. So that was our existence. Twice a day, morning and night, for hours, totally naked. We had to stand outside regardless of the weather. Constant selection, constant. This way, you go this way. And I was in the first row, and they look you up and down, very, very demeaning, totally naked, they look you up and down. I kept on pinching my cheeks so I should look healthy, so I must have known what was going on. And this, for hours you had to stand. This was our existence in Auschwitz. Well, by the time the Hungarian Jews came, it was already 1944, pretty close to the end. And and hunger, very difficult emotion. So a group of us periodically would sneak out at night and look for the officer's kitchen, and the garbage can was in back of the officer's kitchen, and the electric fence on the other side, so it was risky. And we looked for some food in the garbage can, found some potato peels, and whatever there was, that's what we ate. This went on for several months. So we were deported in May 1944, and in October there till October. And then we finally took us away from Auschwitz and sent us to Reichenbach, which was an ammunition factory work. But we stayed in a camp called Langenbillo, which was 5 miles from Reichenbach. There were a lot of factories there. We walked 5 miles each day to the factory and back. And they put me in front of a machine. How did I know? I put stuff parts in it. I just tried to follow instructions. I was always afraid I'd find out how old I was. So we spent several months there as well. By the way, the transport, the Hungarian transport, 80% of the Hungarian transport in 1944 went straight to the gas chambers. They were in a hurry. In fact, I wasn't even tattooed. They were in a hurry to kill as many Jews as possible because the war was not going in their favor. So that now it reached the point where they wanted us even further away from Reichenbach, from Langenbillo. That was the camp. So again, on this long, infamous death march. So they gathered us, and we didn't know where we were going. You had to maintain a certain line. You had to maintain certain speed. Any excuse to torture you or kill you for the needed, no. There are women guards that are really vicious.
They were all Jewish?
No, Nazis. No, not Jewish. So we keep going, people were dropping left and right. And there were 2 sisters from my hometown. I'm from Touch. I don't know if I mentioned it. So one sister said to the other, I can't take this anymore. I just want to stay here. You go on without me. I don't care if I die, I just cannot take it anymore. There were a lot of people like that, but these 2 sisters were together. So the other sister said to her, if you stay, I'll stay. And you're both gonna die. So you better get up and go. And she did, and she survived. So that's where perseverance came in. You could not afford to give up. You had to fight with whatever means you had, inner strength. That's what you needed. So at night we stopped off, slept on haze, and we just keep on going. So the final camp was called Langenbillo. All the camps, all the concentration camps were located between Poland and Germany. Poland hates to admit that. They claim it was in Germany, but it was like that. So kept on going, and we arrived at a place called Paschnitz, another concentration camp. And they handed us a shovel to dig ditches. I thought maybe to get rid of us there. We saw men in the distance doing the same thing. I had no idea what it was for. I found out later on it was for soldiers, for the German soldiers. And that's where we were for the rest of the time. I was there from 1944 to 1945. I consider myself lucky compared to the Polish Jews. They were there longer. And one morning, we wake up and it's suddenly silence in camp. You don't see anybody. It was very eerie. And we found out that they're gone. We're left alone. But soon after that, a wagon of food came in. And we heard that the Russians are coming closer, but we didn't want to stay till they came. I attached myself to those two sisters. I said, wherever you go, I go. Whatever you do, I'll do. I was so young and innocent. Naive is the word.
How old were the sisters?
Pardon me?
The sisters, they were older than you?
Those two sisters were much older, yes, so that helped me, you know. Yeah, they were very kind. The wagon of food came in, as I mentioned, and everybody ran to grab the food, and a lot of them died from overeating. The body couldn't handle it. Shame. But those two sisters took some food off the wagon, and they decided to leave at night before the Russians came in. So we left, and we're walking, and all of a sudden we see people coming from all over. It was an exodus. All over. We're free, but we don't know where to go. We keep walking, and everybody's exchanging conversation. Did you see my father? Did you see my relatives? And I happened to meet somebody that said, yes, I know your father, he's alive with your brother, and your uncles. My uncles were in the kitchen, and they managed to sneak out, at great risk, of course, sneak out food for them, so it made it a little bit easier. Now, I have to tell you a story about my father. My grandson, that's Adina's brother, when he went to Poland with his high school years ago, he's 40 now, my son gave him a letter that he should open up when he gets there. And he did. And it said there that this is where your grandfather was, and which is my father. It would be his great-grandfather. And he was a very religious man. And somebody snuck in a pair of twin. I don't know how they did it. And the inmates did the unloading of the cattle cars and the made parts of everything, shoe parts, and he found little trim and he snuck it in. And a group of men get up very early in the morning at great risk, and they passed around. There wasn't enough to go around. One had the approach, other one had the yard, and they made it to fill up. And we got up very early. So, and then Avi continued, and he passed the crematorium, which is already sunken, and the only way to get in is to get on the roof. He found a hole in the roof. He jumped in, he put on his tefillin, and he said the Shema. for my mother, sister, which would be his great-grandmother. So, yeah. So getting back to our liberation, we kept on walking. We said we want to go home. How do we go home? We walked. We got on freight cars, trains, buses, whatever was available, and got home. And I go straight to my house. And of course it was occupied by Goyim. And they letting me know that you can't have it back. I mean, just by their action. I didn't ask for it. I just was looking for my father and my uncles. And they happened to know them. They told me where my uncles are. And I went to look for him. And when one of my uncles, my mother's brother, had the wife and 8 children walking with us. And he found out, his oldest one was 12 years old, and I was 13. So when he found out that I survived, he was hoping that she would survive too. And I walked into the apartment, I couldn't tell him. It was not like this. He was devastated the rest of his life. Devastated the rest of his life. He could not. It was a horror. Anyhow, they told me my father is in Budapest, because I had 2 sisters in Budapest who was not with us in the transport. And so they were affected by deportation much later. And in fact, my oldest sister, who was 19 at the time, she wanted to come home. She didn't know what's going on in Munkaj. So she had false papers. She changed her name to Christian name. False papers. She went to the railroad station, but the guard stopped her and said, "I want to see your papers." So she gave him the papers, and he looks at it. In the meantime, someone else is approaching the guard. So he said, "Wait a minute, don't go away." He puts the papers inside the belt and pays attention to the other person there. And my sister was very brave, smart and brave. She quickly pulled out the papers while he was concentrating on the other guy and ran away. And when the guard saw that, he was shooting after her. And she kept on running. She always said she didn't care if she was killed. She didn't want to be captured. So she ran into the ghetto. There was a ghetto there already. My other sister was in a safe house. Raoul Warburg had several buildings under Swiss protection, or was it? Swedish protection, right. And that's where she was. She was afraid to walk the streets with the yellow star because she looked very Jewish. She was 18. My 19-year-old sister was not as much. So she ran to the ghetto. And when she saw that immobilizing the people there, she saw already what's going on, in case she didn't want to be captured. A wagon full of bread was being delivered to the ghetto in Budapest. And when she saw that, she ran out and hid under the basket, crazy. And when the driver came, he told her to get out. She said, "I'm not going out, I'm staying." And so he kept going, delivering basket. And the next stop was a monastery where he delivered the bread. And she took that opportunity to get out of the wagon and help him distribute the bread and stay there in the monastery with a false name. And she heard a lot of anti-Semitic remarks among the nuns, and that's where she stayed. So that's how she was saved. My youngest sister, the 18-year-old, met her husband during the war in Budapest, and he was a big Zionist, and he wanted to go to Palestine at the time. And they got married and went to Palestine. So, so from home, I had to go back to Budapest to find my family. And they had information places that helped you out, HIAS, or the Joint Distribution Committee. And they had a list of names that registered survivors, and they found my father's name, my brother, said they had typhoid fever and they were in hospital, but don't visit them, they'll be coming home soon. So that's where I met my father, my brother, and my older sister. And my sweet little 9-year-old sister, of course. There were some 9-year-olds that did survive. She didn't survive. Thank you, my mother. And after that, where do we go? No place to go. So they established these displaced person camps. And we were sent to a camp in Leipheim, Germany, the Bavarian section of Germany. There was an American soldiers were stationed there. So that's where we were for 2 years. I have to tell you, it's one of my memorable days in the baby camp, even though it was a displaced person camp. It's hard to believe. That was wonderful. I was a human being again. I had what to eat. I had this part of my family. So it was a wonderful time. And that was a group of Zionists who ran it. And they taught us about Zionism. We had lectures. They tried to teach us. We had what to eat. We were singing and dancing. It was just wonderful. It was 2 years, but it was just wonderful. But then we had to decide where do we go. So we thought we would go to Palestine. But my father registered in that information center. They asked him if he has any relatives in America. And he gave them the names. He had a lot of uncles here that his mother had brought them out here.
Not here.
I keep saying here.
Yeah.
Well, I thought I'm home. I like it home. I thought I'm home. I always say here, or not here. Okay, in the States. But in those days, it wasn't that easy to come here. First of all, we were under Czech, there's a name for that, I can't think of it now. A quota, Czech quota, which was a very limited amount of people they allowed.
Check what?
Quota. They had,
Quota.
But those days, every country had its quota. Then, and so the committee contacted my father's uncles. And they said, sure, we're ready to go. We didn't care, whichever comes first, that's where we're going. But it took a while because he had to show his bank account, see how much money he has. So we shouldn't be a burden to the state. Unheard of today. So that took a long time. And we had $13,000 in the bank, and that was a lot in 1945. No, 47. We were there for 2 years. We liberated in 1945, and it took 2 years. So he sent several papers, and from my mother's side also sent us, come. So after 2 years, we finally made it. And we just, my aunt and uncle, we came into Brooklyn. She had an apartment for us. After the war, it was very difficult to get an apartment because the GIs were coming home and getting married. And then, so we had to look forward to the future. No one was interested in hearing what went on. Nobody was interested, nobody asked, and we didn't care to talk about it. We put it behind us, and we just looked forward. We just wanted to make a life for ourselves. My 19-year-old sister, by that time she was 3 years older, she inherited my mother's skill in designing and making clothes. She got a job 2 weeks after we arrived. And she made $60 a week, which was a very high salary in those days. She barely spoke English. While we were in this dispersing camp, my father bought an English-Hungarian dictionary, and then he was teaching himself. So, so she just gave the envelope to my father. I wanted to go back to school. I registered, I don't know if any of you know the area in Brooklyn, Lincoln High School.
I went there.
You lived there?
I went there.
Oh, you went there. Good high school, right?
A few years after.
Oh, but
Good high school. Yes.
But I didn't know the language. I took a math course. I had to stop after a while and get a job because, you have to make a living. Went to night school, and then I got a job. I had no skills. I got a job as a trimming millinery. Heads. Yeah, that's what I did. A wonderful Jewish boss, very nice, very kind. And I went to night school. And eventually I went back to school, got my high school diploma and college. So when the kids got older, I didn't mention that they got married and had several kids.
Details.
Yeah, right. It's the story as though it happened to someone else. Otherwise, it's unbelievable for me. But what helped me is what I inherited from my father: hope. Hope and perseverance. Where I got that perseverance from, I don't know. But the hope I got from my father, I never gave up. And my life is wonderful. Married, I have children, grandchildren, and I have, I'm not going to mention already. My father always said, you're not supposed to tell people how many grandchildren or great-grandchildren you have. So I'm going to honor his suggestion. But I'm very grateful for all I have. Children and grandchildren, great-grandchildren. So if you want to ask any questions, I'll be happy to answer.
When did you start telling your story?
Well, the first time was in 1983. I don't know any of you remember Yafa Elia?
Sure.
Yes.
Yeah.
She went through, and she wrote books about it. I listened to her lectures, and she lived in the neighborhood. Because her Rabbi Elia
He was the principal
yeah,
yeshiva.
right. So she opened a small office in the high school, Yeshiva Flatbush High School. And she was determined she wrote about it, and she wanted to interview people that experienced the Holocaust. And, okay, I'm going, you know. It was very difficult. I didn't realize it was going to be so difficult. But that's where it all started. And I contacted those two sisters, those two sisters that survived. One went to Israel, and the other one stayed. And I said to her, remind me of some of the things. I sort of put so much out back of my mind. And if I'm going to talk about it, I want the records straight. She didn't want to talk about it. She said she remembers every little thing she remembers, but she didn't want to talk about it. No. But it was very fun. This was there. But after that, soon after, one of my daughters were getting married, and I took her to the mikveh. And the lady that, you know,
The attendant, Mrs. Berkowitz.
at the office, no, you had to register in the office, said, oh, you look too young to have a marriageable daughter. That's because you didn't go through what I went through. I said, yes, I did. But you probably weren't in Auschwitz. I said, yes, I was. And she looked, this was one of the two sisters. And I couldn't recognize her, but the voice, we both suddenly realized who we are, and I'm telling you that. That was memorable, yeah, to meet her that way. So after that, I had the interview, and that's in 1983, but in 2000...
Had you spoken to your family about your experiences or not?
Even my
before that?
children didn't want to ask me about it. And I you know, if you attended Yeshiva Flatbush, they did talk about it. My youngest daughter, she would ask questions, and I would only answer to the point. I would never remind them, you know, what I went through, because actually I used to think that I don't think they could go through what I went through. They say as you go through difficult times, you build resilience. And our children today, most of them don't go through difficult times. And that's why I didn't think that they could do that. They could persevere. I would answer questions to the point. I would not elaborate and never remind them of what I went through. I didn't want to make them feel guilty. Yes. So, did I answer your question?
In the 2000s, you had...
That was 2000, Spielberg. They contacted me. So they came in with cameras and photographer. Before that, Spielberg sent an interviewer. And soon after that, based on that interview, she asked questions and they recorded it. And they were wonderful. They sent the letter afterwards, beautiful letter, appreciating it. I know it's not easy to talk about it, and it's important.
But at what point did you start talking publicly, like going
Yeah,
to schools or?
Okay, that, sorry, excuse me. What happened was I was here for Pesach 1 year, and my, I don't know, how many years ago was it, 5 years ago?
5 years ago.
My daughter asked me if it was Yom HaShoah, and they were looking for an English-speaking person to speak about the Shoah. Would I talk about it?
Zikaron Basalam.
What's that?
It's called in Hebrew they call it memory in Zikaron Basalam, sitting in the
Yeah.
living room.
In the front?
Pardon me?
In the front?
In the front here, yeah. This time it was here.
Not this house.
Not this house, yeah. I just burst into tears. I said, I can't. I just burst into tears. I just said, I can't do it. Soon after that, I was sorry. I was upset. How dare I not talk about it? I said, I have to do it. So I built up to it. So the first time I taught in my grandson's school, in his social studies class. That was the first time. And after that, following year on Yom HaShoah, this was in White Plains, New York, my granddaughter, her grade, entire grade, I spoke the entire grade. And I have a friend who worked in the Museum of Jewish Heritage, and she taught me to register with them. So they interviewed me, and I went down to speak to a crowd. That was before the pandemic, so I was speaking to a live audience. But after the pandemic, we did it on Zoom, mostly high school students. And last year, I spoke. Yeah, so many groups contact the Museum of Jewish Heritage for speakers. So I was contacted by this woman whose mother works in the museum, and she works in Chase National Bank. And she was determined to talk on Zoom to Chase employees. So she called me up. I have a tissue. So she called me up. Would I speak to 1,000 people? I said, sure. It turned out to be, so when I was finished, this was to all the Chase banks all over the world. And when I was finished, she said, there were 4,000. Then she got messages from them responding to the story. She said, it turned out to be 7,000. So, because it's all over the world. And I have a booklet of messages from them. Very touching, it was very, very touching. And I'm glad I reached a lot of people, so that's why I keep doing it. It doesn't let me forget it, but I feel good if something good comes out of it. There's a lot of ignorance out there. And when I speak to these high school students, sometimes I wonder, do they really want to be there, or they're just doing it because it's required? They have no understanding.
Are these public schools or Jewish schools?
I go to yeshivas, yeah, Jewish schools too, yeah.
And public schools or not?
And public schools, and different groups. And next week on Yom HaShoah, I'm speaking to a group called Boston
Consulting Group.
Consultants. Also, on Zoom, you can reach more people that way, all over. At one point, the museum gave me a choice: do I want to speak live, but it's more convenient this way, to speak on Zoom.
Is your husband also a survivor?
No, he was not. No, he was not. I started to speak after he died. He's gone 10 years already. No, he was from Portland, Maine. And his father was from Portland, Maine.
Very far.
And his grandfather went to Portland, Maine at age 17 when he got, that was the closest port. It was cheaper to get up there than New York. He was 17. His grandfather was 17 when he came to the United States.
Was it difficult to share your story with your husband?
He never brought it up, but he was present when I spoke to Spielberg. And, but
you had said
the people are afraid to ask you that they don't want to hurt you. No.
And you
He
didn't
would,
feel that you
if
had
I
to
talked
share.
about it, he would listen.
Yeah.
But
Did you speak with him about it?
yeah, on occasion
I
it
mean,
comes
when-
up. But
I mean, at the beginning of your marriage, in other words, that's something that's such an important part of who you were growing up.
well,
And
you know
then
what?
Not to share it, it seems so difficult.
Not all at once. Little things that come up, you know.
Uh-huh.
Right.
Did you ever go
Well-
back to Hungary or?
I'm not interested in going back. I don't need that pain. And I heard it's not like it really was. It's becoming a park. It's just terrible.
Museum,
What?
museum,
All right, museum, it's okay, but it's, I mean, that's denying history. I don't know if they can do anything about that at this point. Like the crematorium is sinking.
how about your twin cousins?
My cousins?
The twin cousins, were they experimented on
I
or?
don't know, they're all gone, all 8 children. A mother and 8 children, one family. That's what I said, this uncle was devastated the rest of his life. I wonder if those twins were experimented on.
What happened to the pregnant woman? that
Oh
you
yeah,
tried
the
to
pregnant
hide?
woman, well, we didn't have a very kind couple, and she just disappeared. So, yeah, there's some 9-year-olds, younger ones survived. I don't know how. You know, it's. Anyone else want to ask? Yeah.
You spoke earlier about resilience in the youth today.
About what?
Resilience. How
Resilience,
the youth
yeah.
today are not so resilient.
Yeah.
I also find that the youth today, I teach in high school,
Okay.
and I also find that the youth today are very apathetic. I'm curious to hear your opinion. Well, what's going to be? The survivors like you are not going to exist. I mean, please God, yes, but
Well, that's
you know,
right.
10, 15 years from now.
Realistic, right. I hope it's 10, 15.
Well, what is your opinion? Because for me it's important, for my parents it's important, but for the youth, you know, they've seen it all, they know it all, they don't need this. I mean, I'm very impressed to see young
I'm
kids
glad-
here, but the
I'm glad.
majority,
You know, you are our hope. You have to pass the story on to the next generation like we do on Pesach, and go on and on. It shouldn't be just, and I think of the 1400s during the Spanish Inquisition. How many people are talking about it? It was more than 500 years ago. Who talks about it? People were burned alive. Is it being repeated every year? Is anyone? It's history. It's in the history books, that's all. I'm afraid that's what's going to happen to the Holocaust. Well, we have museums now, okay.
We have,
Okay,
and we
nothing.
have testimony, oral testimony, which makes a difference, I think. The fact that you spoke and were interviewed and that's recorded, somehow a recording, I don't know, hopefully will make a difference in terms of.
I hope so.
Yeah, let's see.
I met somebody who happened to find out that I'm a Holocaust survivor. Really? I'm actually seeing somebody that is a Holocaust survivor? I read about it. Can I touch you? I mean, I have to tell you about an anecdote that took place in a museum during one of these lectures, not by me, someone else, another survivor. She was speaking to young students, and at the end of the talk, a little Muslim girl comes over to her and said, "You really survived all this? Can I touch you also?" My mother said it never happened. So, you know, we had these meetings with the president of the museum, and I said, why don't you invite the parents as well to the talks? They indoctrinate their children.
If I may ask, I always wondered, when you had had to stand for hours in all kinds of weather. How did you do that? And did people just drop? I mean, how could you do that?
Yeah, well, not everyone survived it. I mean, you do. You do. Never mind the death march. That's why it's called the death march. That was a horror. So, it's amazing how much a person can go through. It really is. The drive, you have to want to stay alive. I
Could you
heard,
talk? You just could stand there? Were you allowed to talk?
No.
Could you just stand there?
No, it's just standing. I read about an episode that took place. The Nazi asked this woman, naked woman, to dance for him. And she didn't want to. So he kept on hitting her legs. She was all naked and just hitting her legs so she should. And afterwards, she said, I am so embarrassed. I just want to die. And she did. 10 minutes later, she died. It's another. Why do they enjoy torturing another person? I mean, there's so many episodes, so many. I consider myself lucky, really. I did go through starvation and loneliness, and not knowing what the next day will be. But I didn't suffer the physical punishment like some of them did.
How old are you?
What?
How old are you?
92.
You look much younger than
I'm working at it. It feels good. This son tells us the anecdote about his father. By the end of towards the end of the war, the Nazis realized that it's the end, and they didn't want to leave any evidence. So this one Nazi decided to lace the bread with poison. And you heard about it? And distributed in the bulk. And you're hungry, you grab it, you eat it. There's this son's father, this one person. I don't know if he stole someone else's bread or he wanted an extra piece of bread. And the Nazi was so angry at him, not getting any. And you know what? He's the one that survived. I mean, such stories. Yeah, and there's more. One human being to another.
Did your brother and your father have similar experiences to you?
Actually, they were always together. And during the selection in Auschwitz, my father told me later on, he told my brother to tell them that he's older. And I went ahead and said, I'm only 13, let me go with my mother. And I don't know. And my father said, I don't know how old he was, 42. I'm 42 and I'm healthy, I'm strong, I can work. They both survived, thank God. My father lived to be 96. Very nice, yes.
You had another older brother, you said. Didn't you have two older brothers? No?
Well, one died before the war. But I'm talking about the ones that happened after the war.
You mentioned there was a girl that she said that her mother told her that it never happened.
Yeah.
Have you ever had to debate someone when you were speaking, and all the times that you went out to speak, someone who was a real denier that didn't?
No. But somebody asked me, what do you think of Holocaust deniers? I said, that's just anti-Semite, that's all. They know it happened. You can't deny it. I don't know if you're familiar, but I watched 60 Minutes a couple of years ago, and they discovered Hitler's secret files in Bavaria. Germans were very exact. They wrote everything down, names that were killed, and how they were killed. You can still get it. 60 Minutes. You must check it out. So I tell people, if you don't believe it, just go check the files. The Germans first opened up in 2005. They did not want to open it. And it was finally opened up, and everything is written down. Everything. He thought he's going to eliminate the Jewish race, and he's going to show how he did it. They don't talk about that much, about the secret. There are 15 million names there. I don't know. They showed it twice, actually. Yeah.
Your story has so many, obviously, sad parts. I mean, you spoke about saying goodbye to your mother and your younger sister. How do you deal with those thoughts that clearly you still have when you think about, I'm sure, before you go to bed at night? How do you deal with that? Because, the last week in Efrat's been a pretty difficult week. And we've all got children that are dealing with hard thoughts.
Yeah.
How do you help young kids, or even adults, deal with very sad thoughts and emotions?
It is very sad. It affects me a lot. It affects me a lot. It's very painful. But, yeah, it's too bad it has to happen. Too bad. I mean, if we would have had an Israel, then we would have had a place to go, right? We finally have it, so we have other problems. I am the optimist like my father was, and my one sister was more or less optimistic, but the other sister was pessimistic. And many times I said, you can't, I was trying to talk her out of it, but it's your nature, I guess. You're born with it, you can acquire it, and you can be just born with it. It's a state of mind. It feels good. It feels good to be hopeful because it helps you to keep going. Yeah, I don't like the alternative. I don't like that feeling. I try to. It does have an effect on me, of course. We're all human beings. We do. We should be more caring for each other. I always say that I know what's important now and what's not important. We agree ourselves on Narishkeiten, if you know what that means. Right? Yeah. There are more important things. So,
Did you have friends who went through this with you, or
I
reunited with after, or
No, I didn't. I made new friends. I keep making new friends. At this age you lose a lot of them, but I meet new ones. It's very important. It's very important.
Did your father help you after the war to readjust, or?
I have so many questions for him now. I'm sorry I didn't ask them then. Did he help me? No, we just went on with life. Life, we had to deal with life. Language, and we made it.
Did your father remarry?
Yes. Didn't have more children. She didn't have any children.
Okay.
Yes, he was young. So all I can say say is that we really have to repeat this story. My granddaughter promised me that she's going to continue, and I no longer can.